Welcome to Dental Business RX. Practice success in 30 minutes or less.
Thank you for calling ABC Dental.
Creating an incentive or bonus plan for your practice is an excellent way to make your office more consistently productive, motivate your team to take a larger stake in your practice, allow them to share in the office's success, and provide you and them with more income potential. And even better, it's not all that hard to put a system like this in place. And in a competitive labor market like we have today, it gives you one extra edge or benefit to offer. And that's what I want to talk about in this week's episode of Dental Business RX, how to create an incentive or bonus plan for your practice. My name is Jeff Bloomberg, and I'm your host, and I've structured this episode into two parts. The first part is going to be basic rules or theory in creating incentive plans for your practice, along with what works and what doesn't. And then I'm going to give you a sample plan that you could use to adapt to your practice. And to keep things simple, I'm going to focus on an overall bonus system for your practice as opposed to individual or job-related incentives, giving a hygienist a percentage or having the treatment coordinator get a percentage of whatever they close, as far as case presentations. I plan on covering those individual incentive plans for individual positions in the practice in a future episode. All right, so generally, an overall office bonus will break down into two simple categories. The first one is an occasional or a one-off bonus type game for a specific goal or a specific month, an end of the year thing or something like this. The next one is a regular or a standard incentive plan that's built into your office's business model. This is something you're playing every month, and there might be an additional quarterly or an annual incentive on top of that. I'm personally a bigger fan of a consistent bonus structure with an occasional one-off or jackpot type game to spice things up a bit, maybe a special run up to the end of the year or something. But I think built into your practice should be a consistent structure that you're doing on a regular basis, especially if you have somebody who's ambitious and wants to, make more money. Obviously, they would have to produce more, and that's the basic idea of a bonus. But if someone's ambitious and they really want to have an opportunity to do more or make more, I think it's good to have this just as a regular part of your structure in your office. So as you set this system up, there are a few important points you want to keep in mind. First is, why are we doing a bonus in the first place? Well, you're already paying somebody for the work that they're doing. So if you're going to be paying them more, that would indicate that more productivity is occurring. That's the first thing to keep in mind. The second thing is, if you are paying a bonus and you as the owner doctor have not made more money or you're making less, that absolutely does not work. Everybody has to win in the bonus game. It's not just the doc can't be the only winner and the staff can't be the only winner. Everybody has to win. Which brings us to, what are you bonusing off of? I've seen bonuses for new patients, where someone gets $25 if they refer a new patient into the practice, and that's fine. You can always do that. I've seen bonuses structured off of production, which I don't think is a good idea. I think your bonus system, especially an overall staff bonus, should only be based off of collections. If everybody's doing a good job, it will manifest as collections, and you can only pay people with collections. You can't pay them with production, so that really doesn't work. You don't want to be paying a bonus when you have no money. Again, then you end up in this other problem, which is you're paying out bonuses and you have nothing. Which then we get into, what if you have a staff member who's already on an individual incentive plan? Let's say you have a treatment coordinator and they're getting a percentage of whatever they collect. Well, I don't know that I would also have them on an overall staff bonus. It's a bit of double dipping there. Or you have a hygienist on a percentage. That may not work. You don't want someone getting two different bonuses off of two different systems. So if somebody's already on an incentive plan that pays them really well with high incentives, maybe they don't participate in the overall staff bonus plan. If it's something smaller, you'd have to run the numbers to see what would work. And that's probably one of the more important things. I want to get into the numbers here a little bit. You have to, before you release any kind of a bonus plan to your team, it may sound like a great idea. You have to game the numbers out before you do this. In other words, you have your overhead, which I'm going to talk about in a second, but you have your overhead and you look at, okay, if we collected this much, this is how much I would pay in bonus, which would leave this much. Because you don't want to have a situation where you release a bonus system and it doesn't work. Well, I mean, it may work for who you're paying, but not for yourself. That's going to make you regret ever having done a bonus in the first place. So there's a few things you need to know. You absolutely have to know exactly what your overhead is, including paying yourself, the doctor owner. And by paying yourself, I mean actually paying yourself what you need in order to survive adequately at home. You see, there's some, and again, I'm not an accountant, I'm not an attorney. So if you have questions about this, you can talk to your accountant or your attorney. But, you'll have some doctors where they pay themselves a salary and then they will take profit distribution, monthly or quarterly or whatever. And they need both in order to survive. Okay. So in other words, the salary doesn't really cover things all that well. So they need profit in order to survive. Well, if that's the situation and you're only counting just your salary, which really doesn't pay your bills at home, in your overhead calculation, that is inaccurate because then you're going to set up a bonus system. You're going to use this overhead number to establish your bonus system. So that number has to include paying the doctor so that they can live comfortably on the home front. So make sure that that is included when you actually figure out your overhead. Now, if you want help figuring out your overhead, I have on the episode webpage, we have a download where you can download the MGE overhead sheet. It's a very thorough overhead sheet and covers pretty much every expense you would have in a dental practice, including the semi-annual expenses, which we tend to forget when we're calculating things, like malpractice or whatever. You can download that. We have an analog version as well as a digital version, a spreadsheet, which you can fill out to populate. And if you want help with your overhead, you're having trouble figuring things out, you can always email us for a free consultation or fill out the Contact Us form on MGE's website. All right, so you've figured out your overhead. You know exactly what it is. And you want to establish a bonus system. So if you're going to do a collection-based bonus system, and this will make more sense when I get into the examples, but if you're going to do a collection-based bonus system, the bonus threshold has to exceed your actual overhead by a considerable amount. For example, let's say your actual overhead, including paying you, the owner doctor, is $80,000 a month. That's what it is. $80,000 a month pretty well covers everything. All right, so now you want to set up a bonus for your team. So you're going to tell the team, I wouldn't sit down and also tell your team, oh, my overhead's 80, but the bonus threshold, no. You're just going to give them the bonus number. Okay. And there's reasons behind this. And it's not because your staff are bad. You could have the best staff in the world and this will not work. Okay. We talk about this in our finance seminar, but you go, okay, your overhead's 80. So you have to establish a bonus threshold, meaning anything over this amount pays a certain amount as a bonus. So if my overhead is 80, my bonus threshold is probably at minimum going to be 95,000. At minimum 95,000, because that still leaves me money to cover any additional variable expenses, retired debt, and things of that nature, and gives me a little bit more financial control. So I've done my overhead sheet, it's 80,000, bonus threshold is 95. All right, and last point on the sort of bonus theory, do's and don'ts and whatnot, is you want to have very clear guidelines as to how someone gets onto the bonus system, especially for new hires. In other words, they have to have a certain amount of training. They have to have completed certain requirements. Maybe they have to be performing at a certain level, and they have to be in the office for a certain length of time. You can structure something like this working with, if you have an employment attorney, which I recommend every small business owner has. They're not as expensive as you think. I know we hear attorney and we think it's expensive, which is what people think of, pretty much doctors too, right? But it's much better having somebody you can call who can look at an employee manual or a policy and, you cost you $1,000 as opposed to doing it wrong. And then you find out later that it cost you tens of thousands. So it's definitely worthwhile to have one of these, but you want to have a policy or a structure. In other words, if I've just come to work at your practice, I know that if I check these boxes, I'm now on the bonus system or I can ask to be added or I'm automatically added, whatever your policy is. Okay, so those are the laundry list of things that you want to make sure you have in order to construct your system. Let's take a look with some of those things in mind at a simple system you could institute or you could adapt for your practice. And I have a handout for this called Sample Bonus Plan Ideas that you can also download from the episode webpage, which gives you a basic explanation of this with numbers, because I'm always leery about going over numbers on a podcast. I'm going to keep it real simple because it's a little bit more abstract. This isn't a video. But let's look at the sort of the bones of this. How would this work? So let's say my overhead is 80,000. I've done my overhead sheet. I know my overhead's 80,000. So I'm going to set the bonus level at 95,000. All right. That's my bonus level. And I'll explain what this means here in a second. So the way it works is anything over $95,000 we collect this month or any month, if this is a regular system, the staff are going to get 20% of less a 30% deduction for variable costs. I know that probably kind of hit you for a loop there for a second. So in other words, if I make $10,000 over, we do $105,000, we're going to subtract 30% for variable costs, which is $3,000, which leaves $7,000 left, and the team is going to get 20% of that $7,000, which would be $1,400. So to simplify this, the only reason I do it this way is it actually works out to about 14%. So essentially anything over the bonus threshold, the team gets 14%, but I do it with the whole variable thing so you can think with why is it 14%, because that seems like a bizarre number. So again, my overhead's 80, anything over 95,000, the team gets a percentage of, they get 20% of it less 30% for variable expenses. All right. So let's say this month the office does 120,000. We do 120,000. Now remember our bonus threshold is 95,000. So we did 25,000 over our bonus threshold, our bonus level, right? So what are we going to do? We get this 25,000 extra. We're going to first subtract 30% for variable expenses. So 25,000, 30% of 25,000 is 7,500. Now, is it really going to cost me 30% in variable expenses? Probably not. And why are we doing this? Because when you're more productive, let's say the office was averaging 98 a month, right? And all of a sudden you do 125, you are going to have higher material costs, lab fees, supplies, etc. That's what happens. All right. So we account for that with this 30% in variable expenses. Now, is it going to be 30%? Probably not. But when you're doing finance, you want to err on the safe side, right? I've often found that it's better to have more money than you need than less, unless you're getting mugged. I know it's a bad joke, but you want to have more than you need than less. So we've got this. So again, to get back to our numbers, our overhead was 80. Our bonus level's 95. We did 120, which is 25,000 over our bonus level. We subtract the 30%, which is $7,500, which leaves, if we take 25,000 minus 7,500, that's 17,500. All right. We then take 20% of that 17,500, which is $3,500, and that is your staff bonus. So again, I'll just run that again. We did 120. Our bonus level was 95. We did 25 over our bonus level. We subtract 30%, which is $7,500 from that 25,000, leaves us with 17,500. 20% of that 17,500 is eligible for bonus. All right. Now, so I've got this. We had this great month. We did 25 over. How am I distributing this bonus? And obviously you would do this before or as you institute the bonus system. You can keep it real simple. Basically, every staff member has a share. All right. Every staff member gets a share of the bonus system. The office manager might get 2 or 3 shares, but every staff member gets a share. All right. So let's say we have 6 staff on this system where we just did 125, and 1 is the office manager. So 5 of the staff each have 1 share. The office manager has 2 shares. So there are 7 shares in this bonus system. All right, I'll say that again. So there's 6 staff on the system. 1 is the OM. 5 staff got 1 share each. The OM got 2 shares. So we have 7 shares on the system. So then this is real simple. We take the $3,500 and we divide it by 7. So each share is worth $500. So the $500, each staff member would get a bonus of $500, and the OM who has 2 shares gets a bonus of $1,000. Now, how you pay that out, you might pay it out at the end of the month as part of their paycheck or whatever. This isn't a question for your accountant and your employment attorney, because there are issues where, if they had overtime that might bear on this, that you might have to pay a certain way or more. These are, again, I cannot give you advice on these things because that is not in my wheelhouse. This is a question for your accountant or your lawyer as far as if you run into those situations or how you pay it. But ultimately, in this system, your staff each earned an extra $500 and your office manager earned an extra $1,000, $3,500. You might go, well, wow, that's a lot of bonus to pay, Jeff. But let's look at how the doctor made out here for a second. So now let's look at the doctor's side. We know the staff side, we paid out $3,500, and each staff member, my dental assistant, my financial coordinator, all got $500, and the OM got an extra $1,000. And that's pretty cool. How did the doctor make out? The office collected $120,000. The overhead for the practice is $80,000. And remember, that overhead includes what the doctor needs to make it home. It's not half of what they need. It's exactly what they need. Like they're living comfortably. We accounted for $7,500 in variable expenses. And remember, with variable, are you going to spend the whole $7,500? Probably not, but we're putting a factor of safety in here. Again, it's always better to have more money than you need than less. And we paid $3,500 out in bonuses to our team, plus there'll be employment taxes associated with that. So we have 80 plus 7.5, which you may not spend all of, the variables, and $3,500 plus tax. So you're going to spend, in this scenario, $91,000 to $93,000, all right? But you made $120,000. So the doctor, and out of that $120,000, out of that $80,000, you paid yourself well at home. Remember that. So on top, so you end up with, on top of all this, after paying all this out, you end up with $27,000 to $29,000 left over on top of all of this. So this is great. That's $300,000 a year on top of paying yourself well at home. So you're happy and the staff are happy. The individual staff members made an extra $500 and your office manager made an extra $1,000. All right, so how do you roll this out? If you're rolling this out to the team, I would roll it out with, I'd keep it really, really simple. I wouldn't get into, well, I did my overhead and it was $80,000 and the bonus level, I wouldn't get into that. I would keep it real simple. The bonus level is $95,000. And you can explain to them, look, anything over $95,000, I'm paying, I take 30% off for variable expenses and then 20% goes to the team, which that number works out to 14%. But, again, you might think it's weird, 14%. You can explain it however you want, but you should explain to them what percentage is going to the team. All right. And you can have a little board in your break room, a little dry erase board where you have the graph and show everybody where we're at for the bonus this month so far. Right. And then everybody can stay motivated and keep it going. Now, if you are expanding and you're adding expenses, you're bringing in a lot of new equipment, and maybe make sure this new equipment is going to actually make you money or at least drastically improve patient service. You're not just buying equipment for the sake of buying equipment. Or you're adding employees, which is a very strong possibility if you're expanding. You're going to have to raise these levels. And I want to talk about that for a second because there's a right and a wrong way to do this. If you're going to add as far as how much you raise the level, that is completely subjective. This is, again, where you have to go back to your overhead sheet and game these things out. And there's no specific interval I would give you for this. I mean, I would look at my overhead probably every month or every quarter at least, right? But if I'm adding an expense and I know I'm adding an expense, I have to look at my overhead as soon as possible. So let's say on the 15th of the month, you hire a new employee and you're paying this employee $3,000 a month. Well, your overhead just went up by at least $3,000. But it's also gone up by employment taxes associated with this, as well as any expenses associated with having this employee, computers, computer subscriptions, etc., right? Insurance. So you might go, okay, well, my overhead's really closer to 85 now. So the bonus level, which was 95 when your overhead was 80, now needs to go up to 100 or 105. So let's say this happened on the 15th of the month. What do you do about the month that you're in as far as the bonus game? My advice, nothing. You already told these folks, your team knows that the bonus level is $95,000 this month. Play the game out till it ends. And maybe the last week you can tell everybody, look, okay, so our bonus level is $95,000. We're doing great. We're at $120,000. Next month, the bonus level is going to go up to $100 or $105 from $95. So that they can finish the game that they're already in the middle of and then start the new one next month. There's just, I mean, I've seen it done and I always recommend against it, but I've seen people do it anyway and they end up with a near, revolt on their hands or a mutiny. If you do this midstream, it's really unfair to change the rules of the game on somebody in the middle of the game. Finish the game, change the rules at the end and go, okay, folks, now we're changing it to this for the new month. It's just a smart way to go. Even if it costs you a couple extra dollars, it's a way, way smarter way to go, and it'll keep the goodwill of your team. All right? So those are that's a regular system that you can institute. And you'll notice on the download, the bonus plan ideas download, which you'll find on the episode webpage, which explains this system. It actually gets a little bit more involved. And it gives you a sample of a 3-month system where they only get part of the bonus for the first 2 months because they have to sustain a certain amount or level. And then they get the whole thing in month 3. My personal recommendation, if you're just getting into, you've never had a bonus system before and you're just looking at instituting this, I would not do that. I would just make it a monthly game. Make it a monthly game for now and get used to it. Then you can get fancier with it. You also don't want to get it so fancy that people don't understand how to play anymore. How does this work even? What is the bonus? You don't want it so complex people can't think with it, right? And I've seen that happen too. Lastly, we have the idea of the one-off game or the occasional game or jackpot game. I've seen clients use this for various types of incentives, a trip, or, maybe in the last quarter, the normal bonus stays the normal bonus, but in the last quarter, let's say we take this office I've been using, these numbers I've been using in this episode. Let's say the office is averaging about 100 a month and they institute this bonus game and now they're hitting closer to 125. You might say, hey folks, if we do anything over 400, you're going to pay out an additional one-time bonus for the end of the year, like an end of the year game on top of your normal bonus. Again, game the numbers out to make sure that they actually work. But it's a nice way to just maybe give things a little bit of a boost or spice things up to make things a little bit more fun here or there. But again, if you're just getting into this, do the normal system for a while till you feel comfortable with it. And then you can always add things on later. All right. And realistically, there's no limit to what you can do with this if you really know your numbers. All right. You have to really know your numbers, and maybe you don't like them. Like your numbers, right? Or you don't find it fun, but you own a business. You have to know these things. And I'll leave you with this final, I don't want to say warning because this is actually kind of a cool subject. It's more like a caution, is make sure that whatever you do with a bonus system, that it works numerically, financially, before you release it to your team. Like run it through. If I was doing this and I've done this, I run it through zillion different scenarios to make sure that the numbers work every which way. Because the last thing you want to do is put a bonus system out, get everybody pumped up, then realize midstream it's not working, and then just change it on everybody. That's worse than having not done one at all. All right. So make sure it really works before you release it and you make it more broad information to the rest of your group. All right. Well, I've always been leery about going over numbers on the podcast. I hope I kept it, basic enough, especially if you're driving in your car and you're trying to do calculations here. I hope I kept it basic enough so you could follow along. If you have any questions about this type of stuff, you can email me at jeffb@mgeonline.com, where you can put it on the episode webpage. You can put it in the comments section. I'm always happy to help. Or if you have other questions, how do you set this system up? How do I really figure out what my overhead is? You can contact us here at MGE for a free consultation by calling us at 800-640-1140. Or you can visit us online at mgeonline.com. And lastly, if you enjoy this episode and you want to hear more, don't forget to take a minute to subscribe or follow, depending on the podcast platform that you're using to listen to it. All right, folks, that's all I have for you this week. I hope that helped, and we will see you at the next episode.